In the last video I mentioned that I would be continuing the series by showing you how to load static assets like HTML, JavaScript, any asset that isn't going to be changing over time or dynamically changing. But before I do that, I'd like to make a couple of enhancements or optimizations to this project, to what we have so far. And the first thing I'd like to do is stop using this require relative command. And instead of just blindly loading every single class or constant that we have in our framework, even when it's not required, I'm going to use the auto load command that Ruby has. And the way this works is you give it a constant name, and then you tell it which file will set up that constant, in this case framework/version. And what that'll do is this version constant will be instantiated, but it won't actually be loaded. It won't be available to actually use until we need it. So the way we can see that, what I mean is, if we run in our terminal, if we run our tests right now, so we can say ruby test/test runner, you notice that we only have one error. It says that it can't load such file framework version. And this is interesting because if we look at our test here, you see that error is in this version test file. And if we look at that file, we can see that this one here, test version is defined, passed. So let's go ahead and comment that out, and we can see that when it runs that, we're going to have two passing tests. And so that's we only have two tests in our framework right now. We have this one here, the test that framework is defined, and then this one here that's testing that the version is defined. So it is defined, but as soon as we go to actually use that, it's not able to find that file. It's not able to find framework/version because it doesn't know how to get to that file. Because before, if you remember, we had require relative, and so it doesn't know where that file is relative to where we are right now. So we have to tell it. And the way we can do that is by adding our library here to the Ruby load path. So there's a special constant in Ruby. If we open the IRB, I can show you string load path. And this is all of the libraries that Ruby has access to. That it knows where they are, and you see that our library for our framework isn't in there yet. So we can add that just by adding to the load path. So we can say load path, then unshift is what that is. You can also type .unshift if you want. I prefer to use arrows or two lesson signs, and then we add the path to our frameworks library, to this directory right here. So we say file.expand path and file, and this is because if you expand this the path, it's going to give this full file name, so the framework.rb, and so we say two dots to indicate go one level below this file name, and which will of course be this library file or folder. So now if we run our tests, you see that everything passes because it knows how to find our library. And that's really useful because from here on out we won't have to use require relative anywhere in our project. We can just say require framework / and whatever class that we're looking for or file that we're looking for, and it will load it. So that's the first optimization that I wanted to make. And the next thing I'd like to do is clean up our test runner. Instead of using a test runner, having to run ruby test/test runner.rb every time we want to run our tests is kind of cumbersome. And we might want to add a few parameters to our script as well to indicate which test we're going to run, instead of having it just load every single test that we have in our framework every time we want to run it. If we're having to run the same test over and over again, it gets kind of annoying if we have to run every test in our framework just to see if that one is going to pass. So let's go ahead and do that just by renaming test runner to exe/test. When we open that, you'll notice that the editor here doesn't know how to highlight this. None of the syntax highlighting is here, and that's because we don't have a file extension and it doesn't know what's in here. So instead of using a file extension, let's use what's known as a hash bang. So we just do hashtags and an exclamation point / user bin env and then Ruby. And what that does is it tells Bash, or our shell script, that tells the shell that Ruby is the command to use in order to evaluate what's in this file. And if we reopen that in our editor, we can see that it detected that hash bang and immediately knew that it was a Ruby script that we have here. So now we can run that in our terminal here. We say exe/test. Of course, it tells us that the permission is denied. And the reason is because if we look at the permissions for this, we can see that it doesn't allow this to be executed. Or it doesn't have executable permissions, is what I mean. And we can give it executable permissions by saying chmod +x exe/test. And if we look at that again, we can see now that we have these x's here. That means that it is executable by anybody, any user on the system. So let's go ahead and run that now, and we can see that our tests pass. Just like before, it found all of our tests and it works. We didn't have to make any changes at all to our script. The next thing I'd like to do is set up our test here, test executable, so that we can pass parameters to it. So we don't have to run every single test every time we run exe/test. We can tell it which one in specific we want to run. And I'm going to clean this line up here first by creating a constant called test path. It's going to be the path to this test folder. So we'll expand the path to our current script. We have to go down 2 levels to the test directory. Next, we want to check to see if any arguments were passed to our test at all. If there were, if the arguments were empty, we're going to run every test. If they weren't, we're going to run just the tests that were specified. So if we run that right now, we can see that we do exe/test, everything works as before, but if we give it an argument, nothing runs. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit, so we don't have to expand that path twice since we already have it stored. And we'll go ahead and run that again. And it works. And then we're going to go ahead and instead of running all the files here, we're going to run just the ones that were passed. And the format that I'd like to use for that is like this. Use exe/test and then the name of the test, not the full path and not the relative path, just the name of the test. So if we're running this version test, for example, it would be framework/version, just to run that one. And then I want to be able to specify more. So if I want to run this framework test and the framework version, I can say I can do that. And it will run them in that order that I give it. So we can do that by looping through each of these arguments and get the full path to it. And we're going to have to add the _test RB back to the end of it, and then we can load that. And if we run this, you see that ran just the tests that were in that version file. Or if we run framework, or if we run them together, it runs all 3 of them. Okay, So it works exactly as expected. But it makes it kind of hard to see which tests were actually run. If we go back here, we can see that it's kind of blind. We know that we told it to run these tests here, but it would be nice to have a little bit of feedback so that we can be ensured that the correct tests are actually running. So let's go ahead and do that now. And we can do that just by printing the path here, and then at the end of this we'll put a empty line. And we can see it expands the directory names, or the path names, full path names for us, so we can see that it is running the ones that we wanted it to. It would also be nice if it told us this when we ran it without any parameters, so that we knew all the tests that were actually being run each time. And we can do that just by storing the names of the files like this. We'll say test files, check if the argument is arguments, or if any arguments were passed. If there weren't, it's going to store them here. Otherwise, it's going to do argv.map to the base name. We're going to go ahead and copy this and put it here. Delete all that, and now we can just print out all of the names of the files. So we say puts test files, and that will print all the files. Then we say test files each f load f. Let's go ahead and go back here, and if we say exe/test, it prints out the name of all the files. If we say test framework/version, it shows that we're only running that one. I'd also like to add an empty line to the end there to make it look a little bit cleaner. Okay, so I think that's all the optimizations I want to make. It's a little bit of a messy file now. I can go through this and clean it up. I'll optimize this off camera, and I'll show you the end result in the next episode. But in this one, I think this works for now, so we're going to keep that how it is. And we'll move on to actually loading or serving static content like HTML files. So I actually decided to go ahead and clean that up off camera now for you. So this is what the new test runner looks like. I just commented everything out and cleaned it up and made it look a little bit nicer. And go ahead and run a test. I haven't actually tested this, so I'll do that on camera. So I'll say exe/test, and we see that it runs all of the tests. If we say exe/test framework, runs just the framework test, framework/version. It runs just that test. Okay, so I'd like to clean that up though. I wanted it to print them like this, concatenate them onto one line, but that doesn't look very clean, so I'll go ahead and clean that up here. Actually, all I can do is change that to p test files instead, and print a blank line, and I'll do exactly what I wanted it to do, like that. And putting them all on one line makes it easier, because as our framework gets larger, there's going to be more tests to run, so this is, of course, this output is going to take up more space, and that makes it take up just a little bit less. So I just checked the length of this video and realized that I'm out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Before I do that, I'm going to go into my version and increase this version number so you know this is episode 2. Just a slight optimization to what we did before. I cleaned up some things, made things run a little bit easier to run. In the next video, I'll actually start getting to that, showing you how to serve static HTML and JavaScript, as I said I would last time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.